Okay, so good evening, everyone. So let's discuss something on the demo. So we will be planning to start S4 HANA FICO classes. Okay, so in this regard, I'm going to give some kind of also what are we going to cover, and what are topics that are we covering, and the time, duration, the number of days. I mean, how many hours in a week or in a day. So all these things will be finalized. So before we get into the syllabus part of it, so let's discuss about what exactly the difference between ECC and S4. So let's discuss little about it. Of course, this is purely the basis kind of the topic, but I just want to give an idea about what exactly the S4 HANA is. Now, we used to have ECC systems, and now we can see S4 HANA. Okay, what exactly the difference between is? Okay, in ECC we used to have front end in our hands. This is called front end. Front end in the sense of the software, the configuration, whatever is required, all this will be part of front end, and this is part of SAP only. And the back end in the sense whatever the transaction we post, it will go on. It requires some space, right? It will go and store in some space. That space is nothing but backend. We used to have different, different backend systems. We used to have Microsoft. We used to have Oracle database. Like we have different databases. Okay, so clients used to purchase the front-end SAP software along with the licenses, and they also used to buy the server in order to keep the transactions into that. This was the situation in ECC. Now, the main disadvantage with it is, now I'm posting a transaction in SAP that will go and get stored here in the database. Now, if I want to pull some data, okay, what happens is I will provide a command in SAP, let's say the GL line item report or vendor line item report or customer line item report. The moment I put a command in here in SAP, what it used to do is it used to go into the backend. Used to go into the Oracle database, pull the data, and you know it pushes into the SAP system so that we can see the relevant data. Now, what is the major problem, major disadvantage with it is, SAP is one end and the database in another end. So there is no, the platforms are different. So when you call for some report, when you call for some data, it takes some time to retrieve because the platforms are different. SAP stands on one platform and the database stands on another platform. So one platform to the other platform, the connection is required. That used to be the situation in ECC system. Now, what is in S4? What exactly this thing is? Now here, both front end and back end are on the same. Front end and back end are on the same. So we don't have to go into the platform to pull the data. So both will be in the same instance, same platform. So retrieving of data becomes easy. Okay, retrieving of the data is very easy. People say, right? Most of the people say now in S4 HANA we have Fiori apps. That's not the correct. Even in ECC also we had Fiori apps. In ECC we had Fiori apps, but not many, very minimal Fiori apps. So Fiori app is not the criteria here. criteria is both the front end and back end are on the same platform. That's the main criteria. Of course, there are many Fiori apps added in S4 HANA. Still, if you see, the latest version is 1809. Of course, we're going to get another version also. So when a system, I mean, when SAP system is moving on to the latest version, it means we are getting few additional Fiori apps. Okay, that is the main, the advantage between ECC and S4 HANA. So here in S4 HANA, retrieving of a data becomes very easy. It happens in fraction of seconds, I would say. Of course, there are still some issues with the Fiori app. Comments, SAP is still working, and you can see a lot of difference between, if you see around, 14.10 or 15.10, and the apps, when you compare the apps between 14.10 version to 1809, you will find a lot of difference. So SAP is keep on working on them to work effectively. Okay, so that is the main advantage of S4 system when you compare with ECC. Okay, that's about a brief architecture of SAP S4 HANA. Right. Now,
Nanda?
Yes. Hello?
Yeah, Nanda, I'm sorry,
Yes.
it may sound silly question, but I simply wanted to understand what is the Fiori?
Fiori is, in order to have a transactions to appear, I mean, see, normally what happens in the case of SAP system, I mean, if in the case of GUI, graphical user interface, easy access, right? Easy access. So normally in ECC, we will go into easy access and post all the transactions. In order to have this easy access, you need to sit before the laptop or before, before the desktop or something, right? Now, there are certain other situations, right, where managing director might have to approve certain cases. I mean, particularly in the case of POs, purchase order cases, right? He has to sit in front of the system to do all those things. Typically, each minute is very important to a business organization, right? So in order to make that, available, even, people are traveling or even people are outside the office, I mean, this is kind of a provision that SAP is giving to post certain transactions, to make certain approvals when you're out of the office. Okay. Now, in the case of easy access, you'll have to sit before the system and do it. But if you have an app, Fiori app, it is just like a smartphone apps, right? We have multiple apps over there. So what we will do is, for an approval, let's say I have, let's assume I have to post a vendor invoice, FB60 finance vendor invoice. So what we will have is, we will have a Fiori app on FB60 that will be there on our mobile. So what I do, I'll just click on that, make all the entries, whatever is required. I mean, I'll put all the values, whatever are required, and I'll just post. It means I don't have to be in the office physically. I can do that, even I'm on the road. I mean, just I'm giving an example. Let's say in the purchase order, if purchase order case, the moment you create a purchase order, it does not go to goods receipt directly. I mean, based on the business requirement, we may have, the approval process. Yes. So the final approval comes to managing director. So managing director will not always be in the office. Most of the times he'll be outside only. So it means in order to do a goods receipt, this has to be approved. So in order to get this approved, managing director, has to be in the office to do that. So sometimes it will take a long time. So to avoid all those things, we have Fiori apps. We have Fiori apps.
Okay. Basically, in that it can be done internet.
Exactly. Exactly. So you,
Oh,
in a way, I can say, you can use your mobile to make certain transactions.
okay.
So for a report, I want to see a report, customer line item report. I will have a separate app for that, and I can do. Okay, that is what basically the Fiori app is. It's just like a normal app. You can see a lot of apps, right? Amazon apps or Best
Yeah.
Buy apps or something.
Hmm.
So what normally we do, Amazon will go into that, we'll place an order for certain thing, and we'll make the payment, we'll get it. So
Right.
it means you don't have to open a laptop to do this transaction. You can do it using your mobile phone,
Okay.
smartphone, right? The same way we have here in SAP. So
Okay.
each transaction code, each transaction is considered as a separate app.
Okay. Mhm.
That's about the app. So
Oh,
the Fiori apps have been there in SAP since ECC. I mean, not exactly in early version of ECC. So you can find sometime in ECC 6.3, 4, 5. You can find from there Fiori apps. But prominence has, prominence came came for this thing. I mean, the Fiori apps from S4 HANA. Okay, so people say that in S4 we have Fiori apps, right? That is,
mhm.
that is only the idea, but Fiori apps even we can find in ECC 6 point, some 3, 4 versions, right? That's about basically the difference between ECC and S4 HANA.
Okay.
Now, what are we doing in our case? So we have our module called FICO. It is called Finance and Controlling. Finance and Controlling. What exactly the finance talks about? Finance talks about only the transactions which are required to show to the outside parties, such as we are posting some transactions, salaries payment, okay, depreciations, vendor transactions, custom transactions. With all these things, what we will get, we will at the end of each period or at the end of each year, we will have a financial statements, nothing but profit and loss account and balance sheet. With the help of the profit and loss account, we will come to know what is our profit or net net profit or net loss. That is, that information is required to outside parties, such auditors. External audit will come to our business and he does all the auditings. And the government wants this information in order to see what amount of tax that can be charged. Okay, so basically the finance is all the transactions which are required in order to prepare financial statement in a nutshell. So the financial statements are required to the outside parties. What about controlling? The controlling itself says, right? The controlling itself says that, the controlling of cost. This is purely the internal. No outside parties are required. No outside parties are expecting this information. This is purely an internal activity. Okay, so that is part of controlling. So the term itself says as control. Now this module talks about how to improve the profitability, how to improve the profit, how to maximize the utilization. This controlling module talks about that part. Let's say if is there, he works for 8 hours, and in an 8 hours, so he produces only 8 hours. Now, how to make him effective to produce more? Probably we can give some kind of incentives or some kind of thing, right? So always the controlling part, controlling things about how to reduce the cost. How to reduce the cost. It means in an 8-hour period, so a worker produces 8 units. It means he is taking 1 hour for each unit. Suppose if I offer him some incentives within the 8 hours, he might produce 10. It means the cost per unit is getting reduced. The cost of the labor getting reduced when the production is increasing. So the controlling module basically talks about that. Controlling module basically talks about that. Basically, the controlling module talks about how to reduce the expense. Why why are we reducing the expenses? Why are we not increasing the revenue? See, in order to have more profit, you have two options. Either you can increase your revenue, I mean the selling price, or you will have to reduce the cost. We cannot increase the selling price because in a market we can see a perfect competition. You can find lot more competitors. So the moment you raise your price product, the customers will not buy products. So to maintain the same in the market, we are not supposed to increase the profit. We have only the option we have is to reduce the cost. So this module finds a way to reduce the cost. This is basically a cost accounting. This talks about cost accounting. Okay. Now, in finance, what topics are we covering? General ledger. Of course, some basic settings are there, like company code creation, controlling area, operating concern, all those things are there. Apart from field status, fiscal year, we will discuss them clearly. Okay, so some basic settings. Then after that, we will be doing ledgers, general ledgers, business partner. I would other way, accounts payable, accounts receivable, okay, and asset accounting. Of course, we will discuss even the bank accounting and asset accounting. Okay, so within the ledger, you can see all kind of transactions, like how do we post park documents, recurring documents, document splitting, parallel ledger, parallel currencies. All those things will be discussed here in the general ledger. And in accounts payable, all vendor related transactions, vendor invoices, vendor payments, vendor advances, all those things will be discussed. Similarly, in the case of customers, we will be discussing all the customer invoices and all. Okay, and here in the bank accounting, primarily we will be discussing how the bank accounting happens. What exactly the bank reconciliation statement is. We will be discussing the electronic bank statement, the configuration, but we will not be discussing the front end, because electronic bank statement requires some technical support. Online connectivity is required with the bank database. So that we are not going to discuss, but we will be discussing the process, how it happens and all. And in the case of asset accounting, we have multiple transactions in the asset accounting, right? We will be discussing all of them. So these are the topics that we have as part of finance. And what are we going to cover in control? We will be covering the general controlling and basic settings. Then cost element accounting, cost center accounting, profit center accounting, internal order accounting, next profitability analysis, then product cost. In the product costing, again we will be discussing, of course, the product costing also has a material ledger. Okay, material ledger. So we are not going to cover the transfer pricing in the material ledger because I really don't know about that transfer pricing. If possible, I'll make that thing because I have not worked in fact the transfer pricing. So we'll not be covering that. So these are the topics that we are going to cover in our FICO sessions. And in the cost element accounting, I mean, exact the prime cost, secondary, those things. There is a lot of change between ECC and S4 HANA. Lot of change, right? Cost center, in cost center account, primarily we will discuss about, the cost center, master, the planning values, and all those things. Profit center, profit center is nothing but a responsibility center. So what is the importance of profit center. Internal orders, order creation, right? Profitability analysis, this is called management accounting. It primarily talks about the reports, management reports. Product costing, within the product costing, you can find make to order, make to stock scenarios, right? And the material ledger, this is what we call it as actual costing. So these are all the topics that we are going to cover. Now, in order to cover all these topics, I would say roughly we require 5 to 6 months of time. Roughly 5 months, I would say. Roughly 5 months, I would say. And the more you spend, if you really want it quickly in the sense not 1 month or 2 months, minimum it will take 3.5 months to 4 months. It will take a minimum of 3.5 to 4 months. It means I can reduce only a month if we increase the time. 1 month to 1.5 months. Only the possibility if we increase the time. It means if we have our sessions Saturdays and Sundays, probably for 2 hours or something, we can reduce the time by a month or 1.5 months. And we may expect some potential problems from the system because it is what you call IDES system. So we might have to make some the technical updations in this in order to run certain things. Okay, so this is what the timeline to complete the whole thing. Okay, and we have some new topics here in 1809 version, like we have not I can't say that it is from 1809. We have that in the earlier version, but in 1809 we have absolute it is stabilized, such as profitability. There is one topic called attributed profitability. We can discuss that. We will be discussing all those things. And apart from that, we will be individually discussing the reports in all these cases, right? So in the case of general ledger, at the time of general ledger itself, we will be discussing the reports. Accounts payable, we will be discussing the reports of the vendor. So apart from all these things, we will be discussing about migration. Okay, migration. So system SAP has a migration cockpit, but still it has some issues. We will be discussing LSMW, how to create an LSMW, how to load the data, because this LSMW is the one that is in the hands of the functional people. So there is another approach we have. We can use BAPIs, or we can write BDCs. So BAPIs and BDs are fully technical people work. It means do kind of programming. They write some coding in that, and with that we can use, we can load the data. So this is basically, this data loading is required when we are in an implementation project. So as part of the implementation, we have to upload the data. So LSMW is within our functional people, whereas BP and BDC, we can do that with the help of the technical people. It requires some coding. Okay, and there are some disadvantages with LSMW where we have multiple screens moving from here and there. Then that becomes, I mean, LSMW will not give you that much effective, and moreover, it takes long time to load the data. Whereas BDCs and BAPIs work effectively, very quickly. Okay, so BAPI is more effective than BDC. Okay, so but still we need to have some knowledge, we need to have hands-on experience, hands-on knowledge on LSMW, because so there are certain things like, hello.
Hello?
uh yeah, I don't know, I can't.
I think Nanda got disconnected.
The presenter's connection is down, set tight while you come back online. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
I think so. Where the others? I can't